I'm here at the Iowa Writers Library at the Coralville Marriott sitting down today with Dave Jacoby, Joe Bolcom, and Mary Masher to discuss the 2011 legislative session. We're in the middle of the session and we're going to get an update on everything that's been happening. Stay tuned. Well, Dave, thanks so much for sitting down with me today.
Well, thank you for inviting me back for a mid-session report.
We're about halfway through here, and if anything was going to make it through, we know what's made it through in the House at this point. And in our first show, we sat down and we talked a little bit about this fairly dramatic shift that happened in the balance between Republicans and Democrats. How do you think that shift has affected this session?
Well, we're at exactly the midpoint right now. This last week was funnel week. I think one of the major differences between this year and the previous 2 or 3 or 4 years is the fact that we focused only on social issues up until now. Social issues have taken the headlines, and we have not yet really worked on the budget. We haven't worked on education, and we haven't worked on any vision for Iowa. But I think since the funnel week is over, next week we'll really get down to the nuts and bolts of what we should have been doing the last 8 or 9 weeks.
So what are some of the things that you wish had been discussed, that you're hoping to get to now?
Well, first of all, is honest discussions on the budget. In fact, the budget that we left for this fiscal year, 2011, was very solid, and we just got the new revenue picture last week, and revenues are up $270 million more than expected. So everything that we put into place over the last 4 years is now paying off. So the budget, there's $1 billion more in the governor's proposed budget than what the Democrats set in the budget a year ago. The difference is not the revenue stream, the difference is in our priorities on what we should invest money in, and also what possibilities we have to give some tax relief. I believe strongly that we can give a middle income tax relief to people in Iowa and still fully fund our education priorities.
And of course, one of the priorities of the Democratic Party at this point have been education, job growth. Do you think that the budget's going to reflect that in the end? Because we had a couple people that were contributing questions online saying maybe they should just shorten the session just to 1 week because that's the last week. That's when everything gets done.
Well,
is that when the budget's going to get done?
Many years, regardless of who's in control, the last week is your standings bill, which has everything plus the kitchen sink in there. But I think on a positive note, after funnel week this week, we will get to the budget and we're going to start debating the true priorities. How much to invest in education, how much to spend on peripheral programs, and also, again, what we can do in terms of some tax relief. And I think what you'll see too is hopefully a little more civil discourse. And I think we'll move through some of the barriers that have been put in front of us. And one of the barriers, of course, is the fact that the marriage amendment keeps resurfacing. And, it's been voted on in the House. The Senate has made it clear they won't pick it up. But now there's a group of people who want to impeach the judges, the Supreme Court judges.
The remaining judges.
The remaining judges sitting on the bench. And it's just, I have to say that probably 99% of the people I've talked to have said, Dave, that's not for you to do. There's been no malfeasance in office. Our legal system works. Move on to what's really important.
So as the new ranking member of the House Ways and Means Committee, last year the Tax Expenditure Review Committee was set up, and I'm just wondering, what have been some of the findings of that committee?
Well, there's been some good recommendations. In fact, we did work on a bill 2 weeks ago, Senate File 209, which contained 3 major components. The first component was federal coupling. This helps all of us fill out our tax forms, and it also makes our tax policy consistent between states and the federal government. The second part was bonus depreciation, which greatly helps our small businesses. And the third part was an earned income tax credit. The earned income tax credit is a credit for families and households making $45,000 or less, and it's an earned income tax credit. In other words, you can only earn that credit if people are working. And Generally, people in households of 45,000 or less, the average number of jobs per household is 3. So we see a lot of families that are working very hard to make a go of it, and this income tax credit really helps them out. And generally speaking, also, the earned income tax credit that goes back in their pocket goes right back into the economy.
So fighting for the middle class has kind of been one of the things that's come out of that tax.
It's been a true focus, and that's a true difference right now too, is we're fighting hard for the middle class, and some of the proposals that are on the table right now, but still have to be negotiated, are large cuts for big corporations. And my argument is we need to help small business, but make sure we're truly helping small business and help people in the middle class.
So in our pre-legislative session show, we talked a little bit about some of the ideas about privatizing the University of Iowa. And I got a really interesting question in from Sarah H. in Coralville. This school year, for the first time ever, tuition money funded a majority of the University of Iowa's general education budget. The drop is a reflection of the shift over the past few decades towards a state university system increasingly funded by student tuition rather than money appropriated by the legislature. By definition, this trend is the privatization of the university. So she's arguing it's already privatized. If we were to reverse this trend and restore the University of Iowa as a public institution, taxes will inevitably have to be raised. The revenue is just not there without it. How do you propose we right the situation? Do we have to raise taxes in order to restore the university to a non-privatized institution, as she's arguing?
Sarah is correct in terms of the amount of money that's being allocated to the Board of Regents over the last 15 years. Our institutions are still public, and public in nature is that almost 100% of the operating cost does come from the allocation from the state. But that total cost of your day-to-day operations, the state allocation is 1/3 of what it takes to run the university. Now, what we do need to do is increase that this year by 7%. And we can do that without raising taxes, because the revenue stream, as we were just talking, is $270 million stronger than it was just 3 months ago. And those revenues are based on people's state income tax, sales tax, and corporate tax. And corporate tax comes in a far third. It's the income tax that we all pay and the sales tax from us spending money. That's the top 2 revenue generators for our budget. She's correct. What we need to do, again, as I said, increase it 7% this year from the allocation from last year, and then 5% each year over the next 3 years. But at the same time, we have to ask the regents to make sure that they're looking for efficiencies also. Because whenever you get to a certain size, there's always room for efficiencies and for consolidation of some of your programming. But she's right. We need to be more responsible in funding the university. And part of the challenge that I have, or a lot of Johnson County legislators have, is convincing people from 98 other counties on how valuable the university is, not only to us in Johnson County, but everyone in Iowa.
Yeah, I mean, we most certainly have a concentration from, historically, from people from this side of the state attending the university that's close to home. So I can see how that would be a challenge. So I'm gonna quote you to you. I visited your Facebook page in preparation for this show, and you had a post. In mid-February, the Iowa Workforce Development Director appointee, Teresa Wallard, announced the closing of the Iowa City Workforce Office at East Del Plaza in Iowa City. All 17 staff members will be replaced by 1 volunteer at the city library. The office serves as the 5th largest population area in the state. And you also posted that you were working to correct this ill-conceived plan. Can you just give us a little background on the Workforce Development Office and what you're trying to do on their behalf?
Well, and in fact, since that post and between the meetings with our Economic Development Committee and I serve on the State Workforce Board, I've been corrected that we are the 4th largest population area in the state after the census. And similar to the question or the discussion just a few moments ago on the university, there was a move to privatize parts of the university, and then there was a movement to try to privatize Iowa workforce development. Well, in the past couple months, Governor Branstad and Teresa Whalert, who's the new director of Iowa Workforce Development, have made a quantum leap between 17 public employees and working on a public-private partnership or a discussion on privatizing the workforce development centers. The leap is to volunteer only. So it went from a very vibrant office that serves businesses, serves people that are unemployed, serves dislocated workers, it serves returning veterans, to training a person for 1/2 hour and asking that person to serve all these people at our public libraries. And the public libraries just aren't set up to do that. And I did have a conversation with Colonel Hapgood. Colonel Craig Hapgood and I are high school friends from Marion High School. And I was asking him about services to veterans, because over the next 2 years, we're going to see many veterans coming home as we downsize our operations in Afghanistan and Iraq. And his biggest concern was that we have employment services for these men and women that are coming home. He said the thousands of people that will be returning, maybe close to 40% of them will be looking for work as soon as they get home. So it's important that we have a workforce development center ready to serve people. But it's a poorly conceived plan, and but we have 8-9 weeks left in the session, and I hope to work with Director Whalert and the governor's office to keep our Iowa City office open.
Well, with the unemployment rate so high and job creation being a goal of the Democratic Party, I'd like to see how that one shakes out this session.
Well, thank you. Because unemployment rate in Johnson County and other the more populated areas of the state, it's the underemployment rate that we need to pay attention to also. Mm-hmm. Because in Johnson County, that underemployment rate is around 11 or 12%. People are working, and people are working 2-3 jobs to keep themselves or their families afloat, but they're always looking for that better job. And that's what Iowa Workforce does so well too. Not only the lowest rung, just trying to get in the door, but also to climb the rungs of the ladder to get to better jobs.